I decided to become part of the jury. I was invited for last year as well. And I think the reason I was invited is I am a Planetary Boundaries author of the original paper. And I've worked extensively with Johan. I was a member of the Earth Commission until just recently. So I'm sort of right in the center of the planetary boundaries and the Earth system boundaries. So I decided to participate for that reason. I was also impressed by the size of the prize and look forward to reading some really great papers and hopefully making some people very happy. And I'm glad I did it because I think particularly the international champions, excellent papers. And I was very happy to hear the way in which last year's winners had used their money to further their research and support junior scholars and whatever. I could talk for the whole day. I sit on some committees in the US that are setting research agendas. I am always a cheerleader for social science, which receives a very small proportion of the funding for planetary and earth science work, though humans are causing the problem, humans are impacted by the problem, humans are the solutions to the problem. So I feel as though we need to have a much greater focus on understanding the social dimensions of both planetary boundaries and Earth system change in general. The second area that I think is a very high priority is looking at what I think of as the overshoot issue. I think Johan mentioned that in his talk, that we're not going to stay under 1.5C. We're going to blow through that. We'll get to a peak temperature of maybe 3 degrees C. And then I think we need a lot more research on how we recover from that. Who and what survives? What do we need to do on adaptation? I think is a very high research priority. And then I would like to see more work. There was some of it hinted at in the prize winners, like the work on Senegal, where we look at the interactions between the planetary boundaries and the SDGs, the the Sustainable Development Goals. And in North America, where I work, hardly anybody talks about the SDGs, and yet they are a very strong guide to how can we pull hundreds of millions of people out of poverty while staying within planetary boundaries. And in fact, the Earth Commission has a paper coming out in Lancet Planetary Health, which is actually trying to answer that question. What happens if you prioritize eradicating poverty and hunger first? Then, of course, that makes greater stress on the planetary boundaries. But how do you manage those together? I think the message is that there's a lot of really innovative and exciting research going on. And I think what has happened because of the large amount of attention paid to IPCC or IPCEI, some of the big assessments, is that the public and stakeholders think that we keep saying the same thing, maybe a little louder. But in fact, there's a lot of new insights. So several of the papers that I listen to by national champions or the international ones really had sort of innovative work going on, whether it was about ants or about how trees can't reproduce anymore, or how the vegetation in the tundra is affecting the Earth's balance. And those are things that are not heard, I think. So that I would say is the first message is there is a lot of new stuff. Don't think we're just saying the same thing over and over again. The second message that I think is a little bit more critical of the community that is here is this year and last year seeing 3 men on the screen as the big winners. made me very uncomfortable. I actually do research on women in climate science, and as a member of the jury, I was very aware that the Global South was not as well represented as it should be. And even though there were women authors of the papers, it was the men that were presented with the awards. So I've made that very clear to Johan and others, but the optics are problematic, particularly, say, in climate change. Now, more than 30% of the IPCC authors are women. It's not like the women aren't there. So how do we get more women to persuade their institutions and their academies, which are not very gender balanced, they're mostly men. How do we get good papers by women nominated that earn not just because, oh, we need to have a woman, but because they are the most excellent papers?